Okay, let's unpack this. Usually when we talk about identity theft, we're thinking stolen credit cards, maybe a hacked social media account.
Right, something modern.
Exactly. But today, we're looking at a case of identity theft that, if our source is to be believed, has been going on for about 3,000 years. And the victim isn't a person.
No. The alleged victim, in this case, is the creator of the universe.
That is a massive claim. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel, but it's actually the core idea of the text we're covering today.
It really is.
We're doing a deep dive into God in the English Bible by an author named Swafeng, and I want to set the ground rules right away because this is a heavy topic.
Yeah, for
This
sure.
is not a sermon, it's not an atheist takedown. We're just looking at the forensic analysis this author presents.
Exactly. It's crucial to get his starting point. He isn't dismissing the Bible. He actually calls it a treasure trove of wisdom, right up there with the Tao Te Ching or the Quran.
So he respects the book.
He respects the book. But, and this is a huge but, he has a major problem with the protagonist.
The character called God in the Old Testament.
That's the one. Xu Feng's whole argument is, well, it's pretty provocative. He basically asks, what if the entity in these stories, Adam and Eve, the 10 plagues, the flood, what if that's not the supreme being?
You mean not the greatest creator?
Right. What if it's something else entirely? A lesser, flawed character who's basically stolen the real creator's identity.
So he's putting the biblical God on trial, in a way, measuring him against a job description for supreme being.
That's a perfect way to put it, and that's our roadmap for today. We're going to open the case files. We'll look at the Garden of Eden, original sin, the Exodus, and the very tricky math behind the Great Flood.
Okay, so before we open those files, we need the rubric. What are the qualifications for being the greatest creator? The source lists 8 of them.
Yeah, these are his non-negotiables. So to be the greatest creator, you have to have uniqueness, formlessness, neutrality, mystery, impartiality, mercy, supreme power, and supreme intelligence.
Most of those make sense. Uniqueness, mercy, yeah. But supreme intelligence really stands out to me. That's not just about being smart, is it?
No, not at all. In this context, it means the ability to order the universe perfectly. It means you have absolute foresight, the past, present, and future.
So you can design systems that actually work.
Precisely. If you design a machine, you should know exactly what it's going to do. You shouldn't be surprised by your own creation.
Okay, let's keep that in mind. Foresight and system design. Now, case file number 1, the Garden of Eden. The source calls this the first failure.
Which is a heavy thing to say. We all know the story, but it's usually framed as a failure of humanity, right? We messed up.
Yeah, the blame is always on Adam and Eve. How does he flip that?
Well, Goething uses this really great analogy. Imagine an architect builds a house. The moment the new owners walk in, the roof collapses and crushes them.
Okay.
Now, in that situation, do you blame the homeowners? Or do you blame the architect for a faulty design?
You blame the architect, of course. The structure wasn't sound.
Exactly. The source argues Adam and Eve were the very first products, and they malfunctioned immediately. If they were so weak they could be tricked by a talking snake, that points to a flaw in the design, not the user.
It suggests the creator didn't know how to make a reliable product. And then there's the entrapment angle, the tree of knowledge.
This is where the source gets really pointed. He calls that tree a trap. It's like putting poisonous candy on the dinner table in front of a hungry child. The child's curious. Why even put it there?
And then get mad when they eat it.
It's worse than that. He uses an even stronger analogy. He says it's like constantly showing pornographic videos to young people while demanding they stay chaste. You're creating an environment where failure is almost guaranteed.
No silver in this place, as they say. A total setup. But the part that really fails the supreme intelligence test is the reaction. If you have foresight, shouldn't you know they're going to eat the fruit?
You absolutely should. That's what omniscience means. But the God in Genesis seems genuinely shocked. He's walking around calling, "Where are you?" He's asking questions.
It's like he didn't see it coming.
Right. And Xu Feng asks, if this being couldn't predict the actions of 2 people he just made, how can we trust him with, colliding galaxies? It's a massive failure of that supreme power criterion.
Okay, let's talk about the punishment. This gets into mercy and impartiality.
This is all about proportionality. The source argues Adam and Eve were victims. They were naive. The real bad guy was the serpent, Satan. But look who gets punished.
The humans.
Yeah. It's like punishing the person who got scammed instead of the scammer.
The source has
Yeah.
another analogy for this one, right?
He does. He says it's like an 8-year-old girl gets assaulted. and the judge punishes the girl for not fighting back hard enough while the attacker just walks away. It's not justice.
And that unfairness, it doesn't just stay in the garden. It spreads to all of us.
Yeah.
This brings us to original sin.
This is a huge one for the author. The whole idea that we are all born guilty because two people made a mistake thousands of years ago.
He uses the thief logic to show how weird this is.
Right. Does it make sense to say the son of a thief is always a thief, or the grandson of a murderer is a murderer? In modern law, that's just absurd. Guilt is individual.
But that wasn't always the case historically.
No, you're right. In feudal eras, this was common. If you committed treason, they'd kill your whole family. It was called familial extermination.
So the source is saying this biblical logic mirrors human cruelty, not divine justice.
That's exactly his point. It looks like the policy of an ancient warlord. He even points out how inefficient it is. Over 100 billion people have suffered for this one mistake.
A huge waste.
A staggering waste. The source proposes a brutal but logical alternative. He asks, why not just execute the defective Adam and Eve and create Adam and Eve 2.0?
That sounds harsh, but compared to billions suffering.
From a purely practical standpoint, rebooting the project would have been way more merciful. The fact that this deity let the virus spread suggests he either couldn't fix it or didn't want to. Either way, he fails the job interview.
Okay, let's fast forward. We're out of the garden, and we get to the book of Exodus. Moses. This is usually seen as the big hero story.
Right, God freeing his people. But our source reads it as a horror story of manipulation and just excessive cruelty.
The 10th plague. The killing of the firstborns.
This is where impartiality just gets thrown out the window.
Because it wasn't just Pharaoh's son.
No, it hit everyone. The source points to the firstborn of the maidservant behind the mill. These were slaves. They had zero power, but God killed their children anyway.
And the animals, what did the cows do wrong?
That's the question, isn't it? It's just collateral damage.
Hmm.
But the most damning part of the Exodus story isn't the killing itself. It's the setup, the hardening of the heart.
I've always been confused by that. God hardens Pharaoh's heart, then punishes him for having a hard heart.
It's stated directly in the text. God tells Moses to go demand freedom, but then he actively messes with Pharaoh's mind to make sure he says no.
So wait, Pharaoh might be thinking, okay, this is bad, I should let them go. And then God just flips a switch in his brain.
That's what the text says. The source argues God wanted to unleash all 10 plagues for the drama, for the show. So he rigged the game to make sure Pharaoh wouldn't give in too early.
The source calls this being a schemer.
It's totally two-faced. It's like encouraging a rebellion while secretly telling the government not to back down, just so you can watch the fireworks.
It paints a picture of a deity who's a player in the game, not a judge. And we see that same kind of favoritism in the Cain and Abel story.
The very first murder. And the source argues God basically caused it.
It started with the offering. Abel brings meat, Cain brings vegetables. God likes the meat but not the vegetables. Why?
The Bible doesn't say. And that's the problem. By showing favoritism without a clear reason, the deity created jealousy. He lit the fuse.
So he provoked the murder.
That's the argument. But it gets even darker after the murder. Cain kills Abel. He's guilty. So what does God do?
It protects him, puts a mark on him.
And says, anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over.
The source reads this as God protecting the criminal.
That is twisted. It's completely backward. If you're a good person like Abel, you get murdered. If you're a murderer like Cain, you get divine protection. It suggests it's safer to be the bad guy.
That completely violates justice and neutrality. Okay, I want to zoom out now. From these specific incidents to a global logistical problem, the Great Flood.
Ah, yes. This is where we have to do some math. And according to Sufeng, the math is where the whole story just hits a wall.
Okay, so the timeline. The flood happened about 4,700 years ago.
Roughly. And the Bible says everyone died except for 8 people, Noah and his family.
So 4,700 years ago, a hard reset, 8 people, all from the Middle East.
Correct. Now look at China. Chinese history records their Yellow Emperor ruling around 4,600 years ago. They have records of massive flood control projects just a few centuries later.
I see the problem. If everyone died, how is there a huge Chinese civilization just a few hundred years later?
It's demographically impossible. You can't get from 8 people to millions that fast. But the bigger problem is geography and race.
The Native Americans.
Exactly. If the flood was in the Middle East, how did Noah's kids get to America across the Bering Strait? Did they build another ark? And how did they genetically become Native American in just a few thousand years.
The source also brings up the racial divergence issue.
Yes, and his point is pretty direct. He says that biologically, a Middle Eastern family can't naturally produce Black or Asian offspring.
And even if you go with evolution, that takes tens of thousands of years, not 4,000.
Right, so the whole story just, it collapses under its own timeline. Unless you admit other people survived the flood, which the Bible denies.
So what does this imply about the God of the Bible?
It implies his knowledge was limited. So Feng argues this God didn't seem to know about America or China or Africa. Why? Because the human authors of the Bible didn't know about them.
So he's more like a local tribal deity claiming to be a universal one?
That's the core of the argument. A true greatest creator would know about the whole planet. This one fails the universality and supreme intelligence test.
There's one last piece of this. Communication.
Right. If you're the boss, you need to give clear instructions. In Eden, God walked and talked with Adam. Direct, clear. But then the communication gets worse.
It turns into dreams, riddles, burning bushes, prophets.
Game of telephone, basically. And the source asks, does God have something to hide? Why stop talking directly? It creates a huge trust issue.
Yeah, if you tell me God spoke to you in a dream, how do I know you're not just making it up?
Exactly. A supreme intelligence would know that this kind of indirect communication would lead to confusion and war. And it has. So it seems either incompetent or deliberately confusing.
Neither of which looks good on the resume.
So when you stack it all up, the failure in Eden, original sin, the cruelty in Egypt, the favoritism with Cain, the bad math of the flood, Sui Feng reaches his verdict.
Which is?
Identity theft. The figure in these stories just fails the test. He lacks mercy, foresight, fairness, universality. He cannot be the real greatest creator.
And I want to be clear here, Xiaofeng isn't saying there is no God.
No, not at all. Quite the opposite. He believes in a true greatest creator, one who is actually merciful and universal. His whole argument is that the Bible has mixed up that true creator with this other, lesser flawed being.
So he's trying to clear the real God's name.
That's a good way to put it. It's a defense attorney strategy. My client, the true creator, wasn't there. That was an imposter.
It forces you to read these stories with a critical eye. If a human king acted this way, killing kids, playing favorites, we'd call him a tyrant.
A monster. The source just asks us to apply that same standard here. It's a reminder these texts were written by humans with a limited view of the world.
Which leaves us with a really spooky final question. If the source is right, and the entity in the Old Testament isn't the greatest creator, then who was it?
That is the ultimate mystery, isn't it?
Who was walking in the garden? Who was arguing with Moses?
Was it just a metaphor? A misunderstanding? Or was it another powerful but flawed entity that wanted to be worshipped?
That sounds like a topic for a completely different deep dive. We'll leave you all to ponder that cosmic whodunit.
It's definitely one that'll keep you up at night.
Thanks for listening to this breakdown of God and the English Bible. It's heavy stuff, but sometimes you have to take apart the foundation to see how the house was built.
Hopefully before the roof collapses on you.
Exactly. See you next time.